Good morning.
Good morning and welcome to Talking Politics.
Until this week, Kun Anutin Charnvirakul, the Prime Minister and leader of Phum Chai Thai Party, was always known as a reluctant advocate of constitutional reforms. We have been hearing a lot of talks about amending the constitution, but Kun Anutin was hardly part of the conversation.
Yeah.
So it caught almost everybody by surprise when his Phum Chai Thai Party this week initiated a bill that would lead to the drafting of a new constitution. Phum Chai Thai Party, as we all know, is the core of the current ruling coalition government.
Yeah, and it was done with much fanfare, to be honest. I mean, Anutin, the party leader, personally led a group of his MPs to submit the bill to House Speaker Sopon Saram at the parliament. And of course, he knew for certain that an army of journalists would be waiting.
He knew where the cameras will be waiting.
Yeah, no. Addressing the media, Anutin said the move by Phum Chai Thai Party is meant to honor the result of the recent national referendum, which showed that an overwhelming public support for a new constitution. The referendum was held alongside the general elections in early February this year.
And this was what Anutin said. It shows how sincere Phum Chai Thai Party is in honoring the people's wishes. And as we all know, his party, Phum Chai Thai, has come under a lot of criticisms after failing to follow through its commitment to push for a new constitution after the party assumed power and Anutin became Prime Minister the first time last September. It was a promise that Anutin made in a pact with the People's Party in exchange for the party's support for him to become Prime Minister at that time. But the two parties, in the end, did not see eye to eye on some of the key components of a proposed bill to amend the Constitution, leading to a House dissolution.
Yeah, but back then, Anutin's pledge for a constitutional amendment made with the People's Party was seen more as political expediency than his desire for the actual reforms. Reforming the constitution has never been an agenda of Anutin, who is known as a royalist and a conservative favoring the present political status quo. It was seen as being forced on him by the People's Party in exchange for his political support.
So in the end, it was a promise that Anutin could not keep when Phum Chai Thai Party and the People's Party clashed over the contents of the bill to amend the constitution, as we mentioned earlier. And Anutin was forced somehow to dissolve the House, leaving the bill in limbo and eventually dead on its tracks.
We talked about this on our program in the last episode, actually. But anyway, now Anutin is trying to position himself as a champion of constitutional reforms by making his Phum Chai Thai Party the first political party to initiate a bill to amend the constitution.
But there is one question being raised by media outlets and political observers. Does the move by Anutin and the Phum Chai Thai Party reflect a genuine desire for a more democratic constitution? Or is it simply another act of political expediency? That's a big question.
Yeah, well, according to most political observers, they tend to subscribe to the latter assumption that this is another political maneuver. I mean, take a look at what Phum Chai Thai Party is proposing. I mean, basically the bill is designed to amend the current constitution, focusing on the section, specifically Article 256, that deals with the process of constitutional amendments. In short, the amendment, if successful, will pave the way for a new constitution to be drafted.
And at the heart of the bill is the setting up of an assembly to draft a new constitution. And it will be officially known as the Constitution Drafting Assembly, comprising 100 members. Where will these constitution drafters come from? According to the bill, 77 of them will be selected from candidates representing the 77 provinces of the country. That means each of the provinces will have a representative sitting in the Constitution Drafting Assembly. The other 23 assemblymen will be selected from people with expertise in laws, political science, politics management, and constitution drafting process. Now, we do have a lot of people with experience in constitution drafting.
We've had many of those already,
Correct.
so by now we have a lot of experts on
Because
drafting.
up to now, the Thailand must have had over a dozen of constitutions.
Anyway, so who will be in charge of selecting these 100 assemblymen? The Phumjai Thai Party's bill hands the task to the 700 members of the parliament. So that's the current 500 MPs and the 200 senators. And the assembly will be given 360 days to draft a new constitution. It is required also to set up a constitution drafting committee and a separate committee to solicit public opinions and promote public participation in the drafting process.
And there is a rough timeline for the whole process. The bill is expected to be taken up by the House for consideration in August, and barring any unforeseen circumstances, the bill should be passed by October. That, from a very optimistic view. The process of selecting members of the Constitution Drafting Assembly is expected in mid-2027, that's next year. And the process of drafting a new constitution will begin toward the end of the year, next year. Right? And don't forget that the final draft of a new constitution, we have to go through another referendum. So it means that all the eligible voters will be deciding once again whether or not this new constitution is something that they want for the country.
It should also be noted that the bill the Phumjai Thai Party is proposing deals only with the procedural part of the whole thing. That is the process of constitution drafting and nothing yet on the contents or what a new constitution would look like. But what Anutin has made clear is that any constitutional amendments will not touch the two sections of the current constitution that deal with the monarchy and Thailand system of constitutional monarchy and sovereignty.
Many political analysts and media outlets have immediately questioned Anutin's motive in rushing the bill, despite the fact that amending the constitution has never been his Phumjai Thai Party's priority. And they seem to concur that Anutin wants to ensure that his party, by initiating the bill, is being seen as an attempt to enable Phumjai Thai Party to exert control over the constitution drafting process. This may sound far-fetched to many people, but don't forget the fact that Phumjai Thai Party, which was the biggest winner in the recent elections, has many as 192 MPs and dozens more allies in the House. And more importantly, more than half of the members of the Senate are known to be closely associated with the party, to the point that the Senate is referred to by the Thai media as the Blue Chamber. As we all know that blue is the official color of Phumjai Thai Party.
Yeah, many of the 200 senators are being probed by the Department of Special Investigation in connection with charges of massive vote rigging in the Senate election 2 years ago. The Phumjai Thai Party has been at pains in trying to distance itself from the scandal. And to make sure that the Senate will have a significant say in passing a new constitution or not, the bill submitted by Phumjai Thai sets a threshold for support from members of the Senate as well.
Under the bill, the new constitution will require support of at least 1/4 of 50 of the 200 senators to pass. And that's a rather high threshold. That means whether or not the new constitution will be adopted will not be decided only by a simple majority of both houses. Simply put, the Senate will have a final say. If you don't get the 1/4 of the senators, then forget about the new constitution.
So with such legislative strength, it should not be too hard to imagine what kind of influence Phumjai Thai Party will have in the selection of members of the Constitution Drafting Assembly and whether or not a new constitution will be eventually adopted.
Besides hoping to stake claim to being a champion of constitutional reform, the big question is, what does Phumjai Thai Party have up its sleeve? it's a very good question, but which requires a long answer, and we don't think we have time enough this week to go into details. So we'll try to come back with an answer next week.
You're going to have to keep watching our program. So whether or not we're going to get to the 21st Constitution, we're at number 20 at the moment.
Yeah.
So whether or not we're going to get that is still a long shot.
Okay.
But anyway, let's turn our attention to the recent waves of reactions against the survey on corruption in the public sector. This one sends related government departments and even the Prime Minister in defense mode.
Yeah, this was quite a headline-making event, and it prompted a lot of angry responses from some of the cabinet members involved, right? We are talking about the findings in the recent survey by the so-called Working Group on Zero Corruption. Now we have this private working group that is determined to fight against corruption.
Yeah.
And they conducted a survey, among many businessmen to get their comments and reaction on the problem of corruption at various government agencies. And this group that we're talking about, the Working Group on Zero Corruption, comprises the Joint Standing Committee on Commerce, Industry and Banking, and Friends. Right?
Yeah, Friends refer to the network that you mentioned,
That's
the professional organization and the anti-corruption people.
And the findings of the survey indicate that over 60% of respondents found signs of corruption or benefit solicitation by government officials.
It's more than half. That's a lot.
So basically say more than half of these people say they know there is corruption, they have to pay, they have to make under-table deals to get things done, and that's basically the heart of the issue. Yeah.
So the survey was conducted between March 26 and May 10th this year, and it involves 401 private sector respondents from across Thailand. And information was collected through interviews with relevant individuals rather than through questionnaires. It's not like a multiple choice question. Now, the top 5 agencies with the highest average bribery value by value include, we have the Pollution Control Department. At number 2, we had Marine Department, Excise Department, the Revenue Department, and then agencies related to justice process except the courts.
The agencies you just mentioned are mostly government units with which businessmen come to contact.
Like the Pollution Control Department ranked first, right? And it has the highest average bribe amount offered per incident.
Yeah.
And that number is 102,160 baht.
That's around $3,000 US. That's quite a lot.
A lot of money, yeah. And 45.9% of companies confirmed that they had paid money, given gifts, or provided benefits to government officials in exchange for facilitation. Meanwhile, 37.3% said that their industries were required to make extra payments to secure government contracts, averaging between 11 and 15% of the contract value.
Now, at this point, you might be wondering what the Prime Minister Anutin has to say about this whole thing.
Yeah.
Defensive, that's what we can say. He said that since his administration took office in October, authorities have continuously cracked down on corruption and strictly enforced anti-corruption laws. He also pointed to ongoing operations against scammers, narcotics, gambling dens, and human trafficking networks as examples. He was simply trying to assure the public that his government is not sitting on its hand and is trying to do everything it can to deal with all these problemsome issues. And Anutin didn't stop at that. And he appeared to be rather defensive on many points, especially when he said that the fact that the findings on this corruption issue was based mainly on perception of businessmen interviewed, right? He said that may not be sufficient to really make the whole things credible and for the government to take any serious action, right? And this is what he said. He said, if you ask respondents if there is corruption and they say yes, it's not something sufficient to prove legally that there is actually corruption. So basically, he's saying that if you ask someone that you have paid any money, bribe any officials or not to get things done, and that person say yes, Anutin said, argue that that is not enough to really constitute a legal case against that person, that official.
They show evidence. In fact, there's the role with another cabinet member who will come to in a bit. Anutin also says, if you dare to accuse someone of wrongdoing or corruption, you must also be prepared to face legal action in turn. So yeah, I mean, he's quite defensive about it, and I remember he was asked by a reporter, and then he said this might be the perception of the previous government that has been around for so long. So when you go and ask people if there's corruption and they said yes, it might not reflect the current government,
which has been in office. I mean, only a few months, for a few months, right?
Yeah. Well, let's go to another cabinet member, the Minister of Natural Resources and Environment, Mr. Suchat. Mr. Suchat Chomklin was not very pleased. He was pressed by reporters about the Pollution Control Department, which ranked first with the highest average bribe amount offered per incident. Now, he just look at this footage. I mean, there's an incident. So he was angry and he walked off, bumped into a reporter, and then said, "You don't know me well enough."
Now, this may appear to be a trivial incident. A minister accidentally bumping into a reporter, but you have to, take a look back at what happened prior to that incident, right? He was, I would say, he was grilled by that particular reporter on the issue of corruption at the agency that he's supposed to be in charge, right? Not directly, but under his watch, right? And the fact that he said, "You don't know me well enough," I mean, you just mentioned, he uttered these words after the reporter said, "Did you have to?"
Did you have to bump into me like that?
Like that. I mean, and of course, I mean, it was headlines-making incident, and another one, right? and that sparked waves of criticism, forcing the minister Kun Suchat to come back and apologize in front of an army of journalists and photographers for what happened.
Double publicity for the same issue. Anyway, since we're on the subject of money talks, we're going to close with the discussion about the emergency decree authorizing the Ministry of Finance to borrow 400 billion baht to be used to help Thai people cushion themselves from the economic impact from the war in the Middle East. Now, the issue has been around for a while and has now become another point of contention between the government and the opposition.
Just like the name suggests, the use of an emergency decree means that it has to be something that is unavoidable and urgently necessary. But Sri Kanya Tansakul, a deputy leader of the People's Party, the main opposition party, when she certainly doesn't buy the argument from the government that the decree is needed. She said the fund that being pursued by the government is full of loopholes, and she accused the government of maybe trying to divert or conceal the use of the fund by allocating the fund to cover regular welfare payments under the state welfare card scheme, especially the monthly allowance given to the poor people, instead of using the money to address the energy crisis and rising living costs, which she said was supposed to be the primary objective of the law.
Yeah, so basically, they're talking about the definition of whether or not the usage of that fund is unavoidable and urgent necessity. I mean, earlier this week, the Constitutional Court accepted to consider the petition, which was submitted by 133 MPs through the House Speaker. Now, this petition is asking the Constitutional Court to rule on whether the emergency decree that has already been promulgated complies with the conditions set out in the constitution or not?
Now the cabinet is obliged to prepare a written clarification to be submitted to the court. And the deadline is Monday. While the decision will come out within 60 days, counting from the day the court accepted to consider the petition, which was last Monday, May the 18th, right?
And there'll likely be, well, 3 possible outcomes. So wrong or not wrong, or somewhere in between, like partly okay to use the funds.
But the government, the Prime Minister especially, is very confident that the whole thing, the whole purpose of this bill justified its existence.
Finance Minister Anutin Charnvirakul told reporters this week that the borrowing is needed as the country is now moving towards a cost of living crisis. He said that the latest inflation rate stands at 2.9% and could rise further if no action is taken. So he was like, if the situation is not addressed, he warns that it could lead to a purchasing power crisis, and that would hit low-income earners and small businesses the most, with potentially, drastic consequences, business closures, job losses, and stuff with the economy. So yeah, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see what the court says.
We have 2 months to hear what the Constitutional Court has to say eventually. Right?
Yeah. And yeah, that's it for this week's of Talking Politics. We hope you find it useful. We talked about a lot of issues from constitutional amendments to the borrowings and all the rest of it. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you do, leave us a comment, click like, follow us on social media, and we'll see you next week.
Okay, see you then.